It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp, and we're so excited to be back for Season 6 and continue bringing you outstanding ideas and thought leaders and different ways of thinking. So don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to want to miss any of it. This week I'm joined by first-time guest Norman Fortenberry. He's here from Great Minds in STEM, and he has a great mind to share with us. It's June 24th, 2024, and we're talking about DEI and STEM. Welcome to episode 244. Hey everybody, it's Monday, June 24th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I am a CAE and an ACNP. I'm also the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips. So thank you for joining us this week. And to our global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. And this week, we are welcoming yet another first-time guest, Norman Fortenberry. And we're going to talk about DEI in the area of STEM. If you're not sure what all these acronyms mean, be patient because Norman's going to explain it to us. But Norman, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here. We have met through the Prometheus Consortium First Tuesday meetings. And so glad to have somebody from Prometheus here. And just a little shout out to Prometheus. If you don't know about Prometheus, check them out on the web, prometheusretreat.org. If I got that wrong, Pat Troy, I do apologize. But just look up Prometheus Consortium. You'll find them on the web. Great group of people, big thinkers like Norman. So Norman, would you like to say hello to our audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Well, thank you, Cecilia. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here. And you did get prometheusretreat.org correct, as well as Prometheus Consortium. Both will lead to the organization. I'm actually treasurer of the group this year.
Yay, congratulations.
Congratulations. I am, during my day job, I am the Chief Executive Officer of Great Minds in STEM, which is 35 going into our 36th year now organization. Devoted to preparing an excellent workforce for America's future. The organization really has three pillars, as I summarize it. We inspire excellence in the next generation of future STEM workers, and STEM is, in our context, is science, technology, engineering, math, and for us, also medicine, health. So future STEM workers. We encourage or we sustain excellence in STEM in current students, undergraduate and graduate, through financial support and mentoring support. And we recognize excellence in working STEM professionals, and that's through our HENAC awards and other awards that we'll be developing in the future. As I said, we've been around for 35 years, going into our 36th, and really looking forward to making a larger impact as the organization moves forward.
Well, I am really excited to learn about your group because, as I mentioned to you, as we were prepping for this episode, I was not familiar with your organization. And I think it's really great because, growing up as a little girl in the Midwest, I was not guided towards STEM areas, so I'm really excited that there's this movement, not just based on women or men, but just on you had mentioned underserved populations. And before we dive into some more of that topic, I had mentioned to you that you were the first group I saw that had an extra M at the end of STEM, but you told me that's really not the case, that's kind of a trend in especially the medical area. So could you expand on that a little bit for us?
Sure. So for a number of years, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS, has emphasized STEM with two M's, with the latter being medicine, and also the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine have also used STEM with two M's, since medicine is part of the collective organization. I think that's particularly given the reality of the alignment of traditional science and engineering with the medical field, the growth of MD, PhDs, et cetera, the recognition that a number of scientific and engineering advances are really being fostered within the medical and the health communities, we're starting to see more attention to this integration that's happening.
Hmm. That's really well, and thinking about the rapid development of medical devices and different kind of medical treatments, it really makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because in some ways, and I don't want to go off too far down a different rabbit hole, but we are kind of moving into the age of transhumanism, where we're able to use medical devices to help people live more independently, live fuller lives, and manage their diseases. I know right now, currently, I am recovering from a broken leg, which I don't mind sharing because I've shared it on my blog already. And somebody actually said to me, you should get one of those exoskeletons
Mhm.
that help you stand up and walk. And I'm like,
Yeah.
boy, I wish I had one of those. So that's really exciting to me that you are working on building the next generation of people who are going to be doing that research and working together in those areas. And now your group is focused on the United States, but you mentioned this is not just a US issue.
No, the so in terms of a focus on underserved populations, really anywhere around the world, there are communities that either were indigenous or immigrant that have been the quote unquote outgroups.
Mhm.
If broadly, when speaking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're talking about working toward diversifying a population, making people feel included, the ultimate goal being to achieve equity across all those populations. Well, okay, so in our hemisphere, there are obviously any number of indigenous populations that
Mhm.
have been excluded from the social, cultural, technical mainstream.
Mhm.
Um, Similarly, again, just working with indigenous populations in Pacific Islanders. That's both within the U.S., but for example, in Australia,
Mhm.
Aboriginal populations in Australia have been historically excluded from the social, political, economic, technical mainstream. And
Right.
so there are continuing efforts there. There are, even though people in the US tend to think of China as one homogeneous country, there are any number of different ethnic populations in China. That became, I guess, more recognized when there was the political recognition of the Uyghurs
Yes.
as a minority population that was being excluded through official Chinese government policy, People's
Right.
Republic of China. Um, so around the globe, as you circle the planet, and we can talk about in Europe, where there are any number of Caribbean immigrants, former colonies of England, sorry, of Great Britain, who are
Mhm.
now resident on the island. In France, we can talk about North Africans, people of North African descent, et cetera. So it just continues on and on, where you have populations that at some point were either encouraged or felt they had no choice other than to move to the home state, as it were, the home and state in the international sense of a state,
Right.
uh, in order to advance and finding themselves getting the short end of the stick. So,
Yeah.
et cetera. So, and there are other countries that could be mentioned as well.
Oh yeah, that is definitely a human problem.
Yes,
If you look, I'm an amateur historian, student of history and social movements, and looking throughout the whole history of what we call civilization, I am constantly shocked at how we treat each other
right.
and the way we abuse each other and the way that we are so short-sighted in being inclusive. And the I agree with you with your comments on post-colonialism, because colonialism happened. We went through a whole period of empire building and all the European states were competing with each other. But then the the ongoing ripple effect of that over the decades and centuries since that era ended really have not recovered. I mean, especially if you look at South America, that is just ongoing. You look at a lot of the social unrest there, there's a lot of criminal activity there, and that tells you, well, what's going on in that society. Uh, so there's a lot of things out there in the world that we definitely could be doing better and definitely treating each other better. And it doesn't matter what you look like; it
Right.
matters how you behave and how we treat each other. And so we can do something about it. The question is, will we do something about it? And so a starting place are programs like your groups with encouraging people moving into STEM who
Mhm.
maybe were not encouraged. I know we probably have all had this disappointing experience of meeting somebody, they're driving a taxi cab. They've maybe moved to the United States for whatever their motivation was. And they're driving a taxi cab, and you find out they have a PhD
Yep.
in scientific research or they're a medical doctor. But for some reason, we have put up these barriers that they cannot get back into that area of STEM where they already have training and education. So opening those doors too, not just for the future generations, but can we use this concept of DEI within STEM to open those doors for people who are immigrants to those other countries, as you mentioned?
Yeah, no, I think that's a real discussion, and there are a number of countries that have really taken significant steps in that regard. I think they're beginning to change the rules now, but for example, Canada had a special visa category for talented professionals across a variety of different professions, but it was useful for white collar professionals in science, engineering, medicine, law, etc. Other countries have had programs where you could basically buy a visa. So if you had enough money, you could establish yourself within the country. The US has resisted those efforts, although for years, at least 10, 15 years, people have talked about stapling a green card to PhDs in
Mm-hmm.
science, engineering, medicine, math, in order to retain a population, people who come in. There are 2 points that I really want to make. One, uh, you know, a lot of the discussion around DEI started as almost altruistic.
Mm-hmm.
This is a nice thing to do because we want to treat people well. But fundamentally, at this stage, we're talking about a national security issue. We don't have a choice. There are demographic realities about birth rates. Um, you know, some portions of the population, particularly white males, feel picked upon. It's like, why is it that we're the bad guy? It's not about being a bad guy. It's about there aren't enough of you being born. And in
Right.
science and engineering, in particular engineering, which is my background, I'm a mechanical engineer, if white males have been the dominant population from whom we have drawn engineering talent, and there are fewer and fewer being born,
Mm-hmm.
then the only way to maintain our engineering prowess productivity is to reach out to other populations. Women such as yourself, you talked about being a young woman and not being exposed to STEM. We need to do that exposure. We need to excite interest in STEM. For those students who are interested, they need to be able to make an informed choice. For the ones who choose STEM, we need to retain them and encourage their continuation. And then we need to support them so that when they are employed, they are retained.
Right.
It's all a continuum. And again, nothing against white males. There just aren't enough of them being born to sustain the pipeline the way it has been in the past. And
Mm-hmm.
then to your point, to your point about the immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
that is a decreasing pipeline as well. It used to be we could depend on people coming from around the world to the US because we had unquestionably the best education system in the world. Well, after World War II was one of the few surviving education systems in the
Well,
world.
yeah.
That's part of where that came from.
Yeah.
But now countries are developing their internal capacity. And that combined with a perception of xenophobia, whether actually I think it is real, but maybe even amplified by the press, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
people are afraid to come here. We see a decrease in the number of students from China. That's somewhat geopolitical, but also fear on the part of parents. I think we're seeing decreasing numbers from India. Those are the big places we've been getting people from traditionally. If people aren't coming and we aren't reaching non-traditional populations domestically, then we lack the workforce. We lack the intellectual capital to continue to advance as a nation. And I know people don't like to think about it, but I'm sure people in Britain pre-World War I didn't really want to think about the decline of the British Empire either.
Right.
As a nation, we've been around on the order of, 250 odd years. We have one of the longest continuously operating governments on the planet. Unless you do something to maintain the vitality of that system, there's a decline.
Yes.
And so you have to keep new feedstock coming in.
Hmm.
One of the things, so this is an example I use. I probably overuse it. It may not quite be accurate, but you know, there's a general recognition of the value of genetic diversity.
Hmm.
If you have a variety of genes in your gene pool, you can deal with a variety of different environmental factors, environmental challenges. And frankly, I view the US that way. We
Hmm.
have people from all over the world who are part of the US population base, people who are used to dealing with one situation or another, and the nation overall is stronger.
Yes.
And as you try to become, for lack of a better term, genetic purebreds, you become weaker. And there are any number of examples of that in nature. Right now, I guess in the past few months, the issue has been in the horse racing industry because they've got these horses that are so interbred that have these large bodies on these little spindly legs, and they're falling over and dying, and breaking their legs, and you end up
Right.
killing the horses. But so genetic diversity is a very good thing.
It really
Uh,
is. I'm going to interrupt you there because I
no,
agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Because, I am about as American as you can get. I was born here. It's what I say to people. I'm an American. I think American thoughts. I know American history. I know American folklore, American songs, American literature. My parents were born and raised here. But my parents and myself are all descendants of people who came here from other places. So my grandfather on my father's side came from Italy when he was a little boy with his parents. And I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, which a lot of people may not realize this was, obviously it was founded by the French
mhm.
in their period of exploration, but there was a large German community there. There was a large Italian community there. There were people from all over the world there. And so lots of people, you know, expanding our gene pool diversity. I mean,
No,
people marrying and things like that. And it's been proven that, the more you have the same group of people breed with each other, the less healthy they become. And also it can affect cognitive development, meaning less intelligent people. So and when you start looking at that, you really do need that. And it also, I think, brings people together in a different kind of way because maybe you're bringing two different completely, families from two completely different cultures together. And wow, isn't that cool? You learn about each other. So there's lots of other social benefits other than just having healthier people and being able to do that. And it's interesting because of my current situation, recovering from an injury, I have to have companion caregivers come in
mhm.
to help me out sometimes. And uh, the three women that have worked with me so far, they've all immigrated from West Africa for opportunities here. And one of the women was telling me she's originally from Cameroon and she grew up speaking French. She's I don't really know English that well because I spoke French, but she said she also speaks her local dialect from her village, and her children speak only American English. So in her search for opportunities for her children and herself, they're also kind of losing their former identity in a way
Mhm.
and adopting an American identity. But what America looked like at its founding it's very, what America looks like now is very different.
Mhm.
It's not Western and Northern Europeans anymore. It's people from all over the world. And I'll close this little bit of a diatribe with something my father always told me. He said, the great thing about the United States is anyone can be an American because you can choose it. You can choose that idea, that way of life, and
Mhm.
that commitment to what we're committed to with individual liberty and especially our Bill of Rights, which is rather unique in the world, I think. So that whole mixing of peoples, and we're going through such a period of mass migration right now that's why there is so much upheaval, I think, in society because there have been other periods in history of mass migration, but this is mass migration everywhere all over the world, and that's not necessarily happened before, at least in my understanding.
Well, I think as you started off, the world is a very troubled and challenging place, and a lot of that migration is driven by conflict.
Mhm.
of one form or another. And so we are recognizing and dealing with the results of both conflict and climate change,
Yes.
which is also driving a fair amount of migration as well.
Hmm. Yes, it has. Well, and I know not everybody's familiar with it, but there was a mini ice age in the Middle Ages in Europe, which was a driver that was climate change, and that was a driver of migration because people in Western Europe had to go other places to try to survive.
Yep.
So what we're seeing is everyone on our planet is trying to survive right now. And so I think bringing it back to our topic of STEM, DEI and STEM, I think it's important to include all of these things. But science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medical and health work
Mhm.
research is really what helps us move forward. And that's why it's so important. And that's why it does have to be inclusive and diverse,
Yep.
and in that we need to give people what they need, which is equity. My favorite letter in DEI is the E because
Mhm.
of equity, because it's giving people what they need, not what you want to give them. It's what that person needs at that point. It's not like, well, everybody's getting the same thing. It's like, well, what do you need
Right.
to succeed? We're going to get you the specific thing you need and help you thrive. And I think by doing that, there's that old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. We can lift each other up. Even if we're not in the STEM area, we can help each other by supporting STEM and supporting DEI within STEM and making sure we do get these new voices, new ideas, and have that new generation of excited people.
Absolutely. No, I think that's I think you made an excellent point. And I think, there are a number of posters out there that try to make the point with regard to equity in different ways, but the one with the three boxes or the six boxes
Mhm.
and yeah, everybody equal, you can have everybody stand on two boxes and the tall kid is looming over the fence to see the baseball game. Short kids still can't quite make it over the fence, but if you move the boxes around so that it's equitable, then they can all see the game, and some require more boxes than others. But I think to the related point, the need to recognize that different people have different requirements, different needs, but they also bring different skills and background to the STEM enterprise. If I've had a certain set of experiences growing up that you haven't had, then if we are looking at a given problem and I can analogize my previous experience, I can bring that to the solution to the problem. And that's been part of the business case for diversity for decades. We just need to accept that, recognize it, and work on making sure that we maximize the talent that we have. And I think that's what it's really all about. If we are to continue to advance as a country, we need to maximize the
Mhm.
talent that we have. And that means a little bit off to the side, but still relevant,
Mhm.
not only dealing with those who are obviously qualified because they've got top test scores or whatever, and they've all frequently have top test scores, et cetera, because they've had opportunity. We have to take those who are qualifiable, is another term that I use.
Mhm.
They haven't had the opportunity, but they clearly have the capability. They just haven't demonstrated the ability because they haven't had the opportunity and the preparation to do so. And so we have to work with the qualified, we have to work with the qualifiable, and we have to work across populations to maximize the talent that we have in this nation.
I love that. Does your organization have resources that help people do that to maximize the talent?
We work directly with a variety of populations. As I said, we do K-12 outreach or pre-college outreach, mostly with middle and high school students, to make them aware and to support their interest in STEM, and actually not only the students themselves, but also their caregivers. That does two things. One, it reinforces the interest in the students, but also for caregivers, that would be parents, siblings,
Mhm.
adoptees, relatives of various sundry times. It's a non-threatening way to also introduce them to STEM so they can better understand it and they can be supportive in the guise of supporting the young person. As I said, we offer to college students financial support and mentoring support. When you're the first in your family to attend college as a first generation student, you don't know that some of the things that you do in high school will be not good to do in college. So doing you're drilling into you in school, K-12 growing up, do your own work, work by yourself, etc. But in college, particularly in a STEM field, you're expected to work with others.
Mhm.
That is the assumption. And so if you're working by yourself, you're at a distinct disadvantage. And
Mhm.
you need a mentor who has previously gone through that transition to help explain that to you. That no, this is not a thing to be proud of working by yourself. This is objectively a not good thing because the faculty are assuming that you're working in a study group. And so
Mhm.
you're putting yourself at a distinct disadvantage. So
Well,
the importance of mentoring and role models is also there.
it's really interesting. I really never thought of it from that view. But you're right. Like when you're in grade school, you do your own work most of
Yeah.
the time, but then you do. So so you have the mentoring program and help people
Yep.
find mentors and identify mentors, but does that also extend into helping them learn how to put a study group together or join a study group?
Yeah, we are, as an organization, we are doing that. In addition to the direct assistance, we are, as part of our annual meeting, we're doing some experiments with workshops uh, to provide a richer array of skills development, not only to prepare people for the world of work, but to be more successful in the academic realm as well. So, workshops on how to be a successful student is
Mhm.
part of what we plan to offer, particularly this year at our annual conference, which will be November 6th through 9 in Fort Worth, Texas. Very much looking forward to that event. And the other thing that we do is recognition of professionals. I mentioned that, but those professionals, not only do they get reinforcement uh, among their employers and among their peers, but they serve as role models both to the college students and the younger students. So this becomes a self-sustaining cycle of preparation, uh, sustainment, and recognition.
Well, and what I see coming across in your description of how you help people is that building of networks that then overlap. So you have
Yes.
that home support system, you have the academic support system, and then teaching people the social skills that they need to successfully work with other people. Do you think, and this might be a little bit of an off the wall question, but do you think that the era of the smartphone might be a barrier to people learning those kind of social skills because the younger people are on text all the time and they don't like to talk on the phone. So I can't imagine them wanting to talk in person.
So there have been a number of studies that have talked about the sociological impact of smartphones and people being more tied into their phones than to other people, and their ability to communicate and the other so-called soft skills that variously are called professional skills now in terms of interacting with others, being part of a team, contributing, etc. There have been a number of articles in the press, New York Times, Washington Post, for example, about the benefits or disadvantages of having phone-free schools, for example. Um, I am unsure what my own opinion is on that. I think clearly there are some students, some young people, period, who are so into their phones that they don't seem to know how to interact with the rest of the world. On the other hand, I think they can be tools for social connection. We have to be careful about the type of social connection. So there's been a rise in bullying on phones, for example. But on the other hand, students with an interest in some peculiar, narrow niche field
Mhm.
now are not the only one in their block, neighborhood, city, town with that interest. They can go with parental controls. They can go out on the World Wide Web and find others with a similar interest. And so this ability to build community across what would have been natural boundaries through the careful use of technology, I think can be a benefit. So it's more a matter of how, and this comes down to caregivers. It's all comes down to how caregivers manage the use of the technology more so than the technology itself. I think because, like a lot of things, it can have a good effect or a bad effect depending upon how it's used.
Yes, I agree. It's a tool, and like any tool, it's how well you use it. and the intention in which you use it. Because I was reading about a well-known singer, and I want to say it's Harry Styles, but don't quote me on that. But he actually gave up, he's a very popular performer, gave up his smartphone in 2015. And he just let it go. And of course, the first thing I thought is, well, how do you call an Uber? But I guess he's got that kind of cash. He probably
Yes,
has a driver, right?
right.
But he gave up his smartphone because he said it was cutting him off from the world. And as a singer-songwriter, he needs to be open to experiences so that he gets ideas for the next song. So
Yeah,
lyrics and things like that. And he only does email once a week. And that's it. He just doesn't really have any sort of phone. And that's a micro trend I've been seeing, I've been following in the news. People just either getting rid of the phone completely is very extreme, but just other people they're going back to flip phones or
mhm,
just low tech phones. So because it's exhausting, I
yeah,
guess, social media and stuff. But social media that's a whole other topic because I think it gets way too much weight for the number of people that are involved in it. But that's another story for another day. So, well, this has been just an incredible conversation. Thank you so much. It's been so deep and we've gone to so many layers because STEM is one part of our larger global world, our global society, and how we can help each other and really improve not just the world, but the individual experience of people's lives. So I think this is wonderful. So at the end of every episode, Norman, I like to
mhm.
ask my guest, what is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today? And how can they get in touch with you to discuss this topic more
Sure.
and learn more about your organization?
Absolutely. The one thought I want to reemphasize again is that diversity, equity, and inclusion, despite all the political noise that's currently going on, is not about advantaging one group over another. It's about making sure that we utilize all of our available talent to maximize the opportunities that we have as a nation or as a world. Draw your circle larger. And making sure that everybody can fully contribute to the maximum extent is really what this is all about. In terms of how to reach me, unfortunately, my email address is really long. I've got a long name, and the email stem is also long. It's in Fortenberry. So my last name's Fortenberry at Great Minds in STEM.org. So in Fortenberry at greatmindsinstem.org. And I'm more than happy to talk to anyone about this topic and see how we can advance the cause.
That's great because I think your organization probably has a lot of lessons for other nonprofits who maybe aren't serving STEM specifically, but the approach, the inclusiveness, the overlapping networks, I think you have a lot to offer.
Well, thank you. I believe I agree with that.
Well, thank you. Norman, I need to invite you back for another conversation. This has been great. An example of a leader of Prometheus Consortium as well, folks. So if you're not familiar with Prometheus, check it out. I try to participate in it. I've been to one of the conferences. They're outstanding. So check out Prometheus as well as Great Minds in STEM. So Great Minds in STEM and Great Minds at Prometheus Consortium. You can't beat that combination. So
Absolutely not.
well, we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next time with another exciting episode. So if you haven't subscribed or followed us yet, please do because you don't want to miss a thing in this our sixth season, which we're very excited about. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our website, roguetulips.com. If you're interested in credential education, such as for the CAE exam or other credentialing exams, check out our education page at the website as well and fill out our notify form so you can get more information about our fall session. So that's all for this week. On behalf of Norman and myself, we'll see you next time.